Yeah, for sure. Well, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit, Joe. Whatever you got going on, I understand you've got quite a little thing going on out here.
There's always something going on, but I'm looking forward to kind of getting in and peeling back the layers of your world. And to begin that, I want to know, 4 years ago we were trying to figure out how long this pandemic was going to last, ramifications, all of that. How did you end up surviving that time period, and how did it change the way that you do things now?
Well, for 30 years, I worked with nonprofit organizations throughout the United States and around the world. I was limited at that time. I had retired from full-time travel. I was doing 60% of my time on site with these organizations. And I was dealing with governments and major donors and organizational structures to help them be successful. But in the pandemic period, it really hit the skids as far as getting to people. But technology picked up on a lot of that. And so even now today, much of my work with people can happen by Zoom and other kinds of technology. But there's nothing like, I'm heading to Orlando on Sunday for 4 days of meetings there where you're face to face and working on a strategic plan for an organization. So it does help. Technology has really helped us in continuity, but it doesn't take away the relational capital that you get when you're face to face with people. And I find that people can, even the best people out there that say they never lie, they don't tell you the truth when you're talking on Zoom, because you can see things around them that they may not see.
Yeah.
And as they see it, it's true. But when you get into the environment and meet the people, I find the concerns that could stop them from being successful. And it's right in front of their nose and they don't see it because
Yeah.
they're so into it. So there's a value for anybody that's really trying to help somebody think, get face to face with them.
So,
And
yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I'm curious as a stewardship expert, if I was to put you in front of a bunch of third grade students and one of the kids asked you, it's career day, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What would be your answer? How would you explain that?
Well, I sure wouldn't talk about stewardship to elementary kids, and I do a lot of talking with kids. On the other side of my life, I'm very into a little character named Andy Ant, and he's a children's book series personality. And in that environment, I'm talking to the kids' level of what their values are and what makes differences in the choices they make. Because the whole Andy Ant experience is about choices that a little boy and a little ant make together and the consequences of behavior. So I think, yes, I'm speaking to a younger audience with a story that's built around fantasy to a great degree, but I'm still driving ahead. What are the consequences of the decisions you make today? I've got a client right now that I'm not saying yes to working with them until they can answer 6 or 7 key questions, because I want to make sure those questions are going to radically change the organization. And if they're not ready to respond correctly to those, no what they right now, I want to see some evidence that they can handle the not a train wreck, but the change that could be brought out of really serious about doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's always consequences to behavior, no matter if you're a 90-year-old or if you're uh, I got a 10-year-old grandson, and consequences of behavior on his case, like they are the consulting I'll do next week.
Yeah.
So it really does make a difference. And I think sometimes in the world of reality, we all like to think that the world is a straight line. We go from A to B to C to D, and we want to chart it with a ruler and make it straight. But life is not straight. It's full of curves and unexpected. And if you don't learn to navigate those curves, you can go off the road and it can be a real train wreck.
Yeah.
And I think many people do not realize that life, what they do today, is going to impact them 10 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you eat today is going to make a big difference on your high blood pressure 10 years from now, maybe sooner than that. But
Yeah.
I think whether it's eating, I'm 25 years ago, I started swimming 3 days a week. And I did it for the fun of it. I swim for an hour, so I do about a mile. And I've kept that up for 25 years. Well,
Yeah.
the consequences of that means that I'm much healthier at my age than people that are 5 or 10 years younger that have not been diligent on taking care of their health. And then they wonder why they're falling apart.
Yeah.
Well, it could have been fast food for 20 years, or it could have been choosing not to exercise or other things. Now, I'm not saying there's medical things that come up, but too many times life is got consequences to it, and we do not realize that what we're doing today has a big impact.
Yeah, that's totally true. So
So
what did yeah,
go
no, go
ahead.
ahead. No, you're good.
Well, I know one of the things that happened to me is I was much younger, but I was in charge of a lot of music groups back in my 20s. And I was putting groups together. They were traveling the world. One was in Asia, one was in Europe, and I had 5 in the United States. And I could just see myself as producing music groups forever. My mindset thought this is really fun. I like the industry. I didn't care to sing in groups, but I like to create them from nothing and then put them on tours. And I had these 5 groups going, and suddenly, out of nowhere, another guy comes in as put in charge of all the groups. And I could have said, okay, I'm really going to burn my bridges and get even, and it's not right, and this shouldn't have happened. But when I chose to say, okay, I'm going to walk slowly here and see what's really going on, little did I know that the release of one job that I love brought me into the job of my 40-year career within 8 weeks.
Wow.
And that I was using the same skill package, creating something from nothing. That's what I like to do those kind of things. But it was in a total different world of helping nonprofit organizations raise resources for their objectives. But how did I know that one experience, which I thought was a downer, and I could have really reacted? I've told many of my people I work with and coach, never burn your bridges, because there's no reason to burn them. You may walk away and never have to go back. But if you ever have to go backwards for something, that bridge may be a very valuable resource. So be very careful on what you do in life, because if you do the wrong thing, it can have long-term impact.
Absolutely. Very well said. That's pure wisdom right there. So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
At that time, well, the third grade was actually when I got into my first theatrical stuff. Our little third grade class did the Three Billy Goats Gruff. Crazy little old ditty, but we put on a play, and I decided I wanted to be the troll with 3 heads. And so I basically, as a third grader, helped direct it and made my costume with 3 heads. I didn't know I was getting into theater. I just liked the idea of creating something that parents could see off of a crazy little poem. And I really got into it. Well, that led me into, 7 or 8 years later, I was into theater like you could not believe. 6 years of my life was everything was acting, but I leaned toward the directing. I like the production side much more than I like the acting. Now, I enjoyed the acting, and I was in plenty of plays, but I gravitated toward uh, making sure that the show went well.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, one time we did Peter Pan, and we used a flying machine that had been created out of New York. Well, if you don't run that machine right, and you got 4 people flying on the stage, you're going to have a disaster of wires, because you had Wendy, Michael, John, and a dog and Peter Pan all flying at the same time. It took more people far backstage to fly them than what you saw from the audience.
Yeah.
The technical aspects of life are where that's where real work is done. It's not the visionary that says it; it's the people that help you put it together.
Yeah.
And in that sense, that's stewardship to me. I didn't really understand stewardship. That's what the theme of what I've been writing about is stewardship, but it's not money, which misnomer in many churches today. It's all about, well, stewardship Sunday is get the money raised, type of stuff. Stewardship reflects money, because that's one thing that we can tangibly see. But stewardship is your whole life. How do you choose to say yes and no to any opportunities that come your way? How do you implement? How do you learn to say no correctly? And how do you know how to say yes?
Yeah.
So, even at that point in my life, when I was directing, got into theater, I knew I just could see myself doing that kind of stuff. And after I left theater in college, I was majoring in theater until my junior year at the University of Colorado. And I thought, this is fun, but this is not making a great deal of difference in the world. I want to do something that's got a little bit more punch to it. So
Yeah.
I got in, and I had no clue I would be becoming a fund development consultant, a mentor, and a coach. But I did that for 45 years as a result of some very unexpected things that came my way. And I had no idea what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
But back in that time, I had a mentor myself that said, Larry, you got the freedom to fail.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of trying things, because if you don't have the freedom to fail and know that we're not going to beat you up for it, all you do is, if you fail, is back up and see what to do again and go at it again.
Yeah.
And that really gave me freedom, because I think many people are frozen in life, not being able to move because they're afraid they don't know what the consequences are.
Yeah.
And so the freedom to fail really set me on course. And I took a lot of risks as a result, but anything we did, it was risky that didn't work, we just tried it again or put it away. I mean, it really was not, it was not as big as people thought it was, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so there is risk and there is failure.
So who's been a hero for you? Who's been kind of an inspiration for you in your life?
Oh, my inspiration, probably a college professor was the first one that started pushing me. I knew I was going into theater, and he says, you got more to you than theater. You need to be looking broadly. And I didn't like him talking that way, because I knew I was going to go into theater. But he kept saying, no, Larry, there's more out there. You enjoy this, but you're crafted for something else. He just knew me better than I did. So I think that's where the first person that started to say, you got to spread your wings. I guess he took away the fear, but he also gave me the possibilities that maybe something else was there. I think, and I was not looking for a mentor at that time. He just was being honest with me as a professor in college. But I think, and I try to do that when I'm working with people. I try to be as honest as I can with relational benefits to it, because there's no reason in being harsh on people. It just sometimes people need to be shaken up with a thought that could lead them in a different direction.
Yeah.
So I try to do that often, and I've been privileged to do that with people all around the world.
So speaking of inspirational people, if you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational or fascinating, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Who would I like to talk to today? Boy, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
Uh, I really don't have an answer to that, because
Okay.
many people out there are, what you see on screen, what you see up front is not who they really are.
Yeah.
And so I may want to say, I want to meet the president of the United States. Well, I may not really gain much from that, other
Yeah.
than say I met him. But if I'm going to go to somebody for wisdom, I'd probably find a quiet, controlled, biblically sound, and I'm not talking about being religious, but just grounded in faith and values. A pastor that's been around for 15 or 20 years, I probably would lean towards somebody. If they've been around too long and start thinking too highly of themselves, I get pretty nervous.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But there's disasters out there in any walk of life, but many times people start to think of themselves more highly than they ought, and what you perceive that you want to see is not really what you're wanting to see.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, what is the motivation for you to do the work that you do? You give a lot to help people. And I'm curious, what is that motivation every day to not only do that, but to also evolve as a human being?
Well, the first thing I think what helped me a long time ago is I started with some help of others, understanding who I am. So when I started, I used as a good example is I'm pretty big on the Clifton Strength Finders as an example. Now that just helps me in my own language of who I am, but I was learning that 30 years ago, and I decided that I didn't want to specialize in what I perceived as weaknesses. I wanted to work in my strengths. And when you find out who you are and what your strengths are, and you work there, then you're working in your sweet spot. Otherwise, you're miserable. I had a nephew one time that thought he wanted to be a CPA, and he was golden for that because he had a cousin that was a successful CPA. He didn't realize that a CPA is not liked by many people in many firms. And he was a people purpose person. So as soon as he got into the job, he started with a major firm doing a 6-month audit, and nobody wanted to talk to him for 6 months because he was the person you didn't talk to. Only protocol would let you talk. Well, he was really misfit with his education for who his personality and his strength was. And he repackaged that to become basically a job, finding people to do work in the area of accounting and numbers and so forth. And he loves it because he's using his people skills. But he did not pursue the angle of just going into the CPA work and working with the numbers. So I think anybody, if you figure out who you are, and I think it's important for people to know who they are, and there's tools out there that give you a lot of insights, and you major in your majors, you don't major in your minors. So when a person comes in, there's things I don't do well. I better find somebody else that knows how to do that and not say, I'm going to buckle down and do this. Because if I do that, I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be irritated, and I'm going to be miserable. But if you tell me what to do in my strengths and I can use those. So, I consult with nonprofit organizations. I consult with churches and their governance, which is, they're very concerned about how to very effectively function out there today. When I do that, I'm working out of my strengths, and I don't come in and promise them that I'm going to do something that I don't do well. So, and I'm very results oriented because I knew that was part of who I was. I don't say yes unless I'm ready to say yes, because I can't live with myself if I don't follow through and do it. So knowing who you are and then applying that to your life makes a huge difference in how you function in life. And I love the 40 years of consulting because I was working in my strengths. And I still get called because they know that when they call me, I'm going to be working in my strengths, and I'm not going to try to do something for them that I'm not good at.
So speaking of your clients, what's been one of your favorite client success stories so far?
A number of years ago, I worked with a group in the Midwest, and they were it was pretty chaotic where we moved into it, but they started to put really trust in me, and relationships are key to this. That's why even face-to-face is important. It's more about relational capital that you're building. And when they started to realize they had to make some changes, they really were asking the right questions to help them do some very difficult things, including even getting rid of some inadequate people in jobs. And to see them over a period of time take the right kind of steps and the results come out, because again, the results driven makes me feel worthy in that sense. In a matter of a couple of years, they were really thriving in what we're doing. They had a mission, and I do work with organizations, nonprofits, whether in humanitarian, I chair boards of some nonprofits. But it's not just religious groups, but it's groups with a real mission in hand. If they're listening well, that's what I look for, is people that listen well. And then years ago when I was with one organization, they had a phrase that they were looking for people with a teachable spirit and a heart for God. Well, both of them are important, but a teachable spirit makes a world of difference in a nonprofit organization. And if you find teachable spirits that want to listen and apply and then adapt to their culture, you can do what I do in Africa, in Europe, in Asia. You've got to adapt techniques, because techniques are not the same in all the continents, but the principles behind what you do, they're universal. So you buckle with somebody and away you go. I like to see people that listen carefully and make and implement. I do not like to waste my time with those who want me to come in and tell them what needs to be done, and then they shelf the recommendations and put them on the shelf. They've wasted my time and money, and that doesn't thrill me too much.
Yeah. So of all of the things that you've accomplished and become and evolved into in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Probably the mentors that I've created since late 60s, early 70s. I'm still in touch with probably a dozen people worldwide. And when you see people continue to implement and multiply the principles that we've worked on, that's very rewarding because they're moving to a different culture, a different generation. I was in Spain about 3 months ago with about 120 Europeans from 20 countries. And I was known as the great grandfather jokingly there, but it was the third and fourth generation people taking the principles that we worked on 30 to 40 years ago and implementing those principles. And it was a joke that great grandfather is here. I guess that's the white hair part. But the principles were still the same because they were implementing what we were still talking about 40 years ago in a different context. And that's, I believe that everybody should be working toward a legacy of some type, and the multiplied impact is what gives me a lot of joy out of it, because it's still working and the principles work any place. It's just that you have a relational capital to help a person start to understand the principles.
So Larry, at
In
the
fact,
end of, no, go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh no, you're good.
No.
Oh no, I want to.
At the end of the day,
yeah.
At the end of the day, a few years ago, I was in Ireland, and guys were talking about, in this case, they were talking about a very limited amount of data and information to help teach Europeans lifestyle stewardship. And it was more of a conversation. I was just sitting there listening. I wasn't there at a full consulting capacity. If they were friends, there was about a dozen of them. And as a result of hearing them talk, I thought, what I need to do is go back and dust off what I was teaching 30 years ago and put it in a context of a book for other people to multiply. And that is where a book more recently came from, because I really felt like there was a generation that needed to have the foundation very clear in mind of what effective fundraising is, tactics to get money.
Yeah.
How can I twist your arm? Can I give you something? Can I give you a hat? Can I give you a t-shirt? Every time you hear that, it's, I give you this, you do this for me, I do this for you. Now, there's nothing wrong with that stuff. I'm not saying it's sinful or bad, but it sure doesn't raise the resources that an organization wants.
Yeah.
You've got to see this, the business of helping a person not be a donor. I hate that term. I've tried to teach and get rid of the word. Donor is a guy that gets stuck in the arm and you give blood and you feel a little weak as a result of giving your pint. A partner is one that owns the mission, whatever that is, together. And a partner is one that you say, I am so committed to you that I'll tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you will be my partner and you will walk me through this process. I chair a group called Santa Claus Incorporated out here in Southern California. It's about helping kids. It was started by a little Jewish lady in 1950, and at that time, she was helping maybe 300 kids. We're doing 250,000 kids a year now.
Wow.
And it's all about being on mission and helping people get involved in helping kids.
Yeah.
And whatever we're doing in that context, that's just a mission. And the volunteers get involved in that. It's almost all a volunteer organization. But we've been able to work out arrangements to get a lot of stuff. But when you think about fundraising, you're going to try to manipulate people with words and language and techniques and get them to feel emotional and give you a gift. I'm not as interested in that as I'm helping a person start to catch the vision for something and own it.
Yeah.
And when they do that, they feel like they're partners. So when I was writing this book, I thought if I could help the people, because that was a really radical change in my mind. I was doing very well at fundraising, but I was doing poorly at fund development.
Yeah.
And when I started learning the difference, I radically changed everything we were doing. I was heading a major development office, and that started to bring in untold resources because people started feeling ownership, and they were no longer feeling like they were being milked for money.
Yeah.
They were giving because they were helping the cause go forward, and money was incidental to the commitment they had. So when I wrote Intentional Living and Giving, it was about how can I help people understand how important they can be as a lifestyle steward. Everything you got, you don't own anything. So
Yeah.
be wise in giving it away.
Yeah.
And be prudent in it and get involved in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do, even in the book, I do touch on money because people expect someplace, if you're going to talk about stewardship, you must be talking about money. So let's dedicate a chapter to talk about it and get it over with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's at least 100 things that people could give away.
Yeah.
And money is very tangible. I don't discount the money, because it really helps people know in a tangible way what they are doing. But for the most part, money is just one of those many tools. And I want a person to feel partnership with these nonprofits and to where they own it long term, and they don't need a t-shirt to feel good about their gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is what we're into today. Is I'm not against golf tournaments, but many people that play golf have no idea who they're playing for.
Right. Yeah.
Just playing golf, Yeah. I'm not against the t-shirt. It's nice to have, but that is not going to keep them bonded to you. It's what they believe in you and the cause you're with. And do they really own the outcome with you? And if they don't do that, you're going to be looking for new partners for a long time.
So speaking of your book, if anybody wants to pick it up, learn more about you, reach out, any of the good work you're doing, how do they do it?
Well, it's called Intentional Living and Giving. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, wherever you want to find books. And the word intentional is very important, because that's when you're making a decision that I'm going to live this way and I'm going to give this way. And so it's a spirit of how I'm going to approach life. And then the book unpacks, it is biblical principles behind it, because I think behind the JDL Christian value system is just a huge treasure of understanding. And what I've tried to do in the book is unpack what it means to be a lifestyle steward and be effective in that. And then how the first half of the book is, what is the biblical foundation underneath all of that? The second half of the book is what's the practicalities of how you live this way.
Yeah.
And it's designed for the average person. It's designed for nonprofit organization leaders. Otherwise they're going to be scrambling and manipulating people all the time.
Yeah.
And I was really good at that, and I was making good money at that. But it's not very rewarding when you think all you're doing is trying to find another way to get another buck out of somebody. Yeah. I hate these commercials that are coming out. Can't you give $5 right now? You'll say an internet blurb. I'm thinking, no, I have no interest in giving you $5. You've not built relational capital with me. Yeah. Well, how about $2 before midnight tonight? No, you're milking me.
Yep.
That's not going to get it for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Larry, this has been great. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the work. Thank you for your time and story, and best of luck. Keep doing the great work.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Thank you.